everyone to Spooky Japan podcast. Hope everyone is doing well. Irene is feeling under the weather, so she is not joining us, but it's okay because I have special guest Dustin Crowley, president of Great State Paranormal. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. What's your cat's name behind you?
This particular one is King Tut. Um, you may see this one. He is Petey, and he is very fat. And my dog is also hiding under the desk. He just recently had surgery. He had a hernia, and he had like a fatty mass, I'm hoping, removed.
Mm.
So he's just like out cold somewhere around here.
Okay. Yeah, we love cats here, and usually you see Irene's cat when she is with us. You just did a Parafest at the Trivet Clinic.
Yep.
That is one. See, I used to, before I moved to Japan, I lived in Charlotte, and a trivia clinic was one of my favorite places to go. It was my. I guess everyone says you have somewhere you call a second home. That's somewhere in a paranormal you love to go. That was my second home. Was trivia clinic.
Yeah, it's such a unique place because it's so active, but it's not like evil, dark, demonic, or anything like that. But it's pretty consistently active, and you're almost always going to get something.
You definitely do. And I always felt safe there. That's why I always went several times. It's where if I was training someone to do investigations, I'd go there just because. I mean, you know you're going to get something, but you also know it's a good place to start just because of not only the size, but the spirits are friendly. So I could sit in the red room or in the basement by myself and just I feel fine.
Oh yeah, especially depending on the season, because uh, the clinic does not have heat or AC.
Yeah, that's the
So
one thing.
the basement is usually the safest place to be temperature wise. It's pretty cool in the summer. And then in the winter is usually one of the warmest parts. And I use the phrase warm pretty loosely.
Yeah, it's whatever the weather is going to be, you're going to have to dress accordingly because I'd be there in the winter with 5 layers of clothing because there's not any heat. Summertime, make sure dress light, obviously, because
Very
there's no
light.
AC. Yeah. Yeah, and Tim and Greg, I asked them if they originally bought it with with the intention, and they said they originally bought it. It's on a nursery for people who doesn't know what we're talking about. So it's on a nursery. They said they bought it for the nursery for the plants, and they said, and when they bought the nursery, the real estate agent was like, "Yes, and this trivet clinic comes with it. Do as you want." So they opened it up to the public for investigations. And that's also one of the more affordable places to go to, in my opinion.
Typically. Um, from my understanding, they've increased the rate, but that being said, inflation, blah blah blah. But it's you're still much more likely to rent the Trivet Clinic than like Waverly.
Oh yeah, because it was and everyone knows investing in the United States, you book a place, you're going to be paying a lot of money, but that place was fairly a reasonable price. So that was always for me good. What was the how did that turnout go with the Parafest? Or what did you guys name it?
So, with the Trivet Clinic Parafest, we had roughly right around 120 guests for the day, which is pretty decent, especially for the first time it's ever happened.
Hmm.
Um, we had a pretty good lineup, in my opinion, of workshops and panels that we had throughout the day. So overall, there was a little bit of something for everyone that came, and I like to think that we did a pretty good job of making it a big, open, family-friendly event. Something where anyone from a novice to someone who's very experienced could walk away with something.
Hmm. Have you been there? were you only there for the fest, or have you actually investigated other times there?
It was the first place my team ever investigated. We're based out of Wilkesboro, so it's 40-ish minutes away from where we live. Um, and I would say probably over the years we've been there maybe a dozen times, give or take. One of my team members used to volunteer doing the tours there, and she's my personal friends with Tim and Doug.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty intimate with the location.
Oh, I adore Tim and Doug so much that it makes me sad if anyone disrespects the clinic or them.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I've heard stories and I'm like, man, I absolutely love Tim and Doug. So that makes me so sad. They're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So here to just people disrespect that place is not.
yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of people breaking into the clinic and stuff like that. Um, so it's not good when you hear about that kind of thing. But luckily, most people in the community, not just the Hamptonville, Harmony, Union Grove community, but also the paranormal community,
Mhm.
usually treat the two of them pretty well as treating the property pretty well.
I remember the first time I was there setting up, and I walked outside after they gave the tour. I went outside to get stuff, and every time I went outside, you hear loud footsteps walking towards you. And a lot of people say they have the same experience. You go outside, you hear footsteps, but you don't see anyone. And it's not like light, so you're like, is that a footprint? But it's pretty loud and audible. Like you can't.
Like you can hear like the crunching of leaves or
Yes, and I
books
told
or
people that I'm like, I heard like little branches that fell breaking. I'm just like, and that's and I'm looking around, and I'm just like, you don't see it.
yeah, and we've actually gotten some of the like highest levels of activity during our investigations outside on the grounds,
Yeah,
which is insane because most people they only
don't.
spend time inside the clinic, which
That's one thing I
you
say
know
is you
don't
have
get me
to.
wrong, the clinic's great, but
Yeah,
the lands and the grounds around it are just as powerful.
definitely. That's what a lot of people say is you go outside, you're getting stuff out there too, and it's just that's one thing people forget is you have to take the time to do it outside too, because you definitely are gonna get spin out there. Even if you're not having don't have anything set up, you're not doing anything, you're at least gonna hear the footprints walking.
Oh yeah, definitely.
My favorite thing about that place is the heart-shaped lake in the back. Hearing this story where Dr. Trivet made the heart-shaped lake in the back of it for his wife. And I
Yeah,
was like, that is the sweetest thing.
I've ventured out to the lake a few times because it's for your listening audience, the lake is really close to the clinic.
Mhm.
Maybe 50, 60 feet away, give or take. Um, but you kind of got to be careful for snakes and stuff because I don't know what's a good snake and what's a bad snake. For me, if it's near me, it's a bad snake,
Yeah,
just de facto. Um, so we try not to go to the lake too often, but at the same time, I mean, it's still a pretty cool place.
it is. One of the first things I had after, so we started setting up. One of the times I was there was setting up, but we haven't set everything up yet. We only set a few things up yet, and I was the only female there in this group. Me and someone else was in the basement setting stuff up, and then we heard between us, and we weren't standing too far apart, but we heard a woman laughing,
Hmm.
and it was a loud, audible laugh. And we both turned and looked at each other. I don't even know why I looked at him. It's just a natural reaction. You hear laughing. He turned to see why I was laughing. I don't know why. I just turned to see why he was laughing. I don't even to this day. I'm like I don't know why because that was clearly a woman. We both just turned and we just heard this woman laughing, and they said it was probably his wife laughing because that's a lot of people hear her laugh.
Yeah, and for your audience, uh, the Trivet Clinic is, I'm pretty sure, certifiably in the middle of nowhere. So there's not a lot of houses around. It's not like this laughter could have been like a neighbor. Um,
No, it's not. There's
it's
not any neighbors
pretty
around. You don't.
remote.
Yeah, it's pretty remote because, I mean, like we said earlier, it's on a nursery there, so there's not. The neighbors are really far away, so it's not like
It
you would
wasn't
hear the
them.
neighbors, but you could hear it. It was directly between us. We've had it's funny because anytime I go with a group, and we always say this, you start to get to know like the spirits in the place, so you kind of know who they're going to interact with more. And it's I've been in groups where I'm just like you're not respectful enough for them to want to really do anything with. And I knew this going in. I'm just like, and I told them, I'm like, hey, due to the group size, I just made it as an excuse because I didn't want to sound rude. I'm like, hey, due to the group size, I'm just gonna do my own thing. So we're all not like crammed in one place because it's even though the Trivet Clinic is an old hospital,
It's tiny.
it's tiny. So
And
I'm
sound
like,
travels so good inside.
that's why we recommend smaller groups in there, just because sound wise it does travel. So this way it just kind of helps it out. Yes, you could technically split the group up, but even then, we always say try to do smaller groups. So one could be in a basement, one could be in the second floor, just so you're not hearing each other between those floors. But the rooms are pretty small. After it was his hospital, it turned into it was temporarily a nursing home.
Yep.
You still have some of those residents there. I remember with one of the groups walking into Nancy's room. It's that group I said where I'm just like, I don't feel like the way they're not going in respectful enough for them to really want to deal with them. They're in Nancy's room, and I'm just they're not getting anything. So I convinced them to leave her room, head somewhere else in the clinic. So they leave, but I walk in. She sprays me with perfume. Like I could smell
Mm.
women's perfume, older women's perfume. I'm not wearing any scented things because anytime you do an investigation, you should shower, not use anything that has scents. Don't put on your perfume, your scented lotion. Just so when you do smell something, you can't be like, "Oh, it's Dustin's cologne." It can't be
Yep.
his.
But
So I'm not wearing
for
anything.
your viewers, deodorant. Wear deodorant. That's
Deodorant. That's
that's the
not
exception,
deodorant. We do not count on that. Please wear deodorant.
especially in the
Yes,
clinic.
yes. But I'm the only woman in that group. I walk in. She hits me with her perfume, and you hear her audibly say, "Thank you." And I'm like, I just kind of laugh because I'm like, she was not digging them.
And women's perfume is so distinct in that
It
kind of
is.
scent pattern that they had from back in the day. So it's definitely, it's not something modern.
That's one thing I say is I can't explain a perfume besides it smells like the older woman's perfume. But there was not any perfume in there, so it's not like someone found a bottle and sprayed it before I walked in. There was no none in there. Obviously, you have some stuff goes on like we've heard male's voice say we walked in there, anyone in there, and we'll like hear male older man say hello. So that was fun. Obviously we've had some I've had some decent conversations with the spirits in there. So I could definitely say that's also why I say that place is a second home to me.
Oh yeah, and when it comes to like the voices and stuff, one of our team members. So with Great State Paranormal, all of us are chronically late for everything, with one exception. Um, and so this one team member, he got to the clinic early to set up.
Hmm.
Um, and by early, it was the time I said to be there, but early because everyone else showed up like 20 minutes later. Um, anyway, he went in and he started just walking the house, getting a good feel for things. And then he heard walking and footsteps and talking, and he ran out and waited for the rest of the team to show up. He's also, aside from being chronically early for everything, he's also like one of the most skittish, scared people on the team. So we never let him forget that one time he had like phenomenal activity, and he had every opportunity to just be like, hey guys, it's me, we're going to do an investigation tonight, we're going to talk to you, and you probably remember this, and blah blah blah. And instead he chose to just hightail it out of there and sit in his car.
Nothing would have hurt him there, but it's probably just the shock of it happened.
Oh yeah, and if he's ever alone, even in a place that we've been dozens of times, and he hears something, he's out of that room. If he's got someone with him, well, he's a little bit braver. But if he's ever by himself, his default is run.
Yeah, it's the safety of having someone else there is something different than being alone. We've also had upstairs, because there is Majesty. Besides Majesty's ball, she's there, and she's turned on toys that we brought in, started playing with them. I've had the piano in that place do a
Mm-hmm.
couple of tunes on
That
a
small
piano.
little like toy piano that's in the kids' room.
That one did go off.
Or are you talking
I
about the
actually
piano
the
that's on
piano
like the first
downstairs.
level?
Yeah, that one also went off that night.
Well, Dr. Trivets' wife was a huge fan of music, and that's actually why that piano is in the room.
Yeah, they say play because she was a classically trained
Mm-hmm.
opera singer.
She was.
She loves classical music. So they say if you play classical music, you may get more interaction out of her.
One of our team members is a church pianist, and we periodically have him play some classical music, some church hymns that would have been popular back in the 1920s, and that usually gets us some pretty good responses.
Yeah, that's one thing we always do going in. That's one of the first things we do is after we set things up, start playing classical music to hopefully get her more out to interact.
That's awesome, because a lot of people tend to forget, like, we're going into the spirit's home. We leave after 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, but that's their home, that's where they stay. So that's awesome to hear that your team goes in, kind of sets the mood, shows a little bit of respect, gives them some things that they're going to enjoy. Whether they talk to you or not, you still want to make sure that the spirits have a good time.
The first time I went there, of course, one of the things I like to do is, especially with no one else being in there, went to all 3 floors and did, like, a video tour, just like, "This is what it looks like," just, later on, if you're just wondering what it looks like in pictures, this is what this is what the basement looks like, this is what the first floor looks like, this is what the second floor looks like. I walk around in the basement, and you know how it's, like, in a circle
Mm-hmm.
down there? I'm getting towards the door. The door in the back there. And you just see if you do it watching the tour, you see the camera kind of go up, and that's because it was more in winter time, so I was wearing layers, had the hood, and you just see someone like pulling on my hood, and I just kind of go back because someone was literally pulled on my sweatshirt, so I went back. It
Yeah,
wasn't
there's
malevolent.
usually a lot of spirits that tend to hang out in that back part, especially
Yeah,
if they
that's where
don't
it
want to
was.
talk to other people. Um, so it doesn't really surprise me if you were going to the part that they wanted to just try to hide out in, that they're like, nope, not back here.
Yeah, they just kind of pulled me, and people saw my sweatshirt looked like it was being pulled, and I'm like, I felt like I was being pulled back. It wasn't hard enough for me to fall. It's just more of a make me just go back. What other places have you guys investigated there?
So at the clinic, um, one of the more predominant ish or things that we get is we usually get like a mournful, sorrowful, distressed woman in the red room.
Mm.
Um, Based on some of the information we've gathered from the spirits, we believe that there was possibly a woman who had a botched abortion from back in the day done. Um, Maybe she passed, maybe she didn't, but the abortion part at least took. Um, and then we get a good bit of activity just on the grounds. From what we can gather, it seems to be more Native American in nature, which that is was a major traveling route for some of the Native American tribes. We don't have any records that any of them settled the area as far as like staying there long term, but they would have used it mainly as a traveling ground. So periodically, we pick up native spirits that might just be passing through.
I thought Tim and Greg said there was an Indian burial ground somewhere like across the street. That's also why sometimes you get it. Is
Yeah, uh, that's the theory of another paranormal investigator, and the co-coordinator of the Parafest is Alex Matsuo,
Mhm.
and they are the publisher of A Hamptonville Haunting, the book
Yeah.
that chronicles the history of the clinic and everything like that. And in their research, they were not able to find anything at all regarding Native Americans that would have settled the area, much less had a burial ground. So, as far as we can tell, there is not a Native American burial ground on the property. If there is, there's absolutely no historical record that it would be there.
I adore Alex. I've had a couple online conversations with her. She
Oh,
is yeah, she published for anyone who doesn't know who he's talking about. She's published several books. And when I say she's published them, she puts at least years of research and interviewing people into these books. So it's not something like she just goes online one night to look up some information and does a book. I mean, she does years of thorough research.
oh
That's why it
yeah.
takes her years to write one book.
Like her latest book, um, Women of the Paranormal, Volume 1,
Mhm.
is just like mind blowing of just how influential women have been in our field because typically, historically, men get all the credit.
Yeah.
Uh, I say that as a man, my bad for my gender. Uh, I don't intend to. I always give credit where credit's due. But Alex has done a great job of pulling a lot of those historical records and really just kind of bringing their stories back to life. And then they've also done the Hamptonville Haunting. They've got one about a haunted hospital that I believe is maybe in Virginia. There's a ton of stuff that they've done. I would highly encourage your viewers that if you want to know more, just look her up and see some of the options she has out there.
She also runs a group on Facebook called The Spooky Stuff where she does post a lot of facts too. Some of it is
Oh
from the
yeah.
Women of the Paranormal, some of it is from other things in her books. She also, if you also look online, she does a ghost hunting 101 that if you're trying to break into ghost hunting for the first time, she has one if you're trying to look for a good place for knowledge.
Yep. And she also is the director for the Association of Paranormal Studies,
Mhm.
which is a pretty large organization that brings together professional paranormal investigators, and they do a lot of really great things for like private case studies. So, Alex, I don't know how they manage to do it. They kind of cover all the bases and they do them very well. So, my hat's off to them. And I gotta say that they have been a joy to work with the Parafest. Um, I went through a few small life changes from when we announced the Parafest to when it went live. You know, nothing major. I just lost my job. I bought a house, moved, sold a house, started a job, and then started another job, um, all within the same time span. So they were able to really take up a lot off of my plate and make sure that everything was still successful. So um, that's like a little snippet into the behind the scenes for anyone that went to the Parafest. And yeah, I can't speak highly enough of Alex.
She, besides her full-time job, does spend a lot of time traveling to these Parafests, so she's often very busy. So you'll hopefully see her at some Parafest there too.
Yep, I think the next one that Alex is going to be at is probably Con Carolinas. I know that's at the end of May, mainly because I'm also going to be at it, and they just announced like the panels and stuff today, and I'm moderating like 3 or 4 of them, which is fine. But you know, it it's always a joy because that's where we get to meet people and share ideas and network and just all kinds of stuff. So I love all of these conventions, especially the good ones, because you and I both know at least the paranormal community is not always collaborative in nature. There can often be a lot of polarizing egos and my team's better than your team and you're not authentic and all of this. But most of the conventions that I go to, everyone is just there to really build up the community. And that's just really refreshing.
Yeah, with Alex, I mean, like I said, I mean, you've met her in person. I've only talked to her a few times through Messenger. She's always been very nice to me. So even though she's written several books, you wouldn't. She's still very down to earth.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to figure. That's trying to figure out how to say it. She's still very down to earth. Like she's not one of those. But I know more because I wrote several books, and
And she's been
you
on
wouldn't.
TV too. So, I mean, most of the time, like, I've met people who have been on TV shows, whether it's a big one or small one, and they think that, like, they are the end all be all, even if they were just on like a 5 minute clip on something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And Alex is so down to earth and humble. And it's, again, just so refreshing to be around someone like her.
she's been on several TV shows interviewing too. So you wouldn't know it until you see her stuff online because she doesn't go around acting like, well, I've done all this, so I'm clearly better than you. It's just she's very humble. But she also does go straight to the facts on everything too.
Yep. And that's something that's important because, I mean, you got to be factual based. I recently started my new job with the Historical Association of Catawba County.
Mhm.
So I am the site manager for one of their locations, Harper House, which is haunted, by the way. Um, and one of the main things that we do there is make sure that the story and the history that we're telling, whether it's about the house or about any of the artifacts or any of the other locations, are as factual as we can possibly have it. And hey, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But when it comes to a place that's got history tied to it, the paranormal can easily be used to validate what has happened and what's occurred. We've used spirit box sessions to get names that we then went and scoured primary documents on and were able to make connections, which the historical community at large would say, oh, you just got lucky. But I don't care if I got lucky. I don't care if the spirit gave me a name and then I was able to find a census record that tied them to the location. Like, that's still pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So when you go into a place to investigate, do you guys ever do research first or research after, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I mean, it depends on the location. So we do a lot with historical associations, museums, that kind of thing. And sometimes, whether you do the history or not, you know it. So, like we just recently had an investigation at the USS North Carolina battleship this past weekend. You don't need to research too much to know that ship's history. Um, it was active in World War II. It's the most decorated battleship from World War II. It had 11 souls that were lost on it. I mean, the torpedo attack when the Japanese attacked the Wasp, which was in the formation that the battleship was in. There's some things that you're just not going to be able to go in blindly about. But we do have some members who prefer to never know any of the history and go in. And then we've got some people who they want to know anything and everything.
Yeah, we've always tried to ask people that, and we always get the mix of people say some before, some after, because some people are like, I don't want to know anything to kind of influence my investigation, so we'll look it up for later. If we hear a name, we'll look up later. We just don't want, we just go in blind without knowing.
Yeah, and when it's a private residence investigation, we usually do as much research as we can, whether that's, pulling sales history, tax records, deed history, old maps of the area, because if it's a private investigation, I don't necessarily care how accurate my techniques may or may not be. I'm there to help a family. But if it's, hey, we got a chance to go and investigate uh, the old college on, or the old hospital on College Hill. There's a ton of history out there if you want to look into it. If you don't want to leave that to influence you, then research the history later and compare and contrast it. Just whichever floats your boat.
I've been there. We got some good audio there. So that's always why I love talking to people from the Carolinas, because I'm like, I actually know some of the places you're talking about, so I can imagine it when you're talking about it. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Especially like the Trivet Clinic, going back to it, because I'm just like, I've been there so much that I can see it in my sleep.
Same.
Like,
I've definitely
you
had
can tell.
dreams that I was in the clinic once or twice.
So have I. It's like you can tell me any little location, and like, yeah, well, this there, and I'm like, I know exactly the area you're talking about. Especially like in a basement, everyone refers to that that design.
The little nautical star that Timmy
Yes,
got
that
put in.
star on a base. Like, yes, so I used to love like to get pictures of that thing or
Apparently, a
put
lot of
stuff.
people have some like headcanon lore that they put that nautical star in because there was a pentacle or a pentagram or something on the floor there.
I've
Uh,
heard, yes, I have heard of that rumor. Someone has told me, they're like, "Oh, I swear to God, there is it is covering a pentacle."
and per Tim and Doug, they put it in because they thought it was pretty and they liked it.
That's what's funny, how they put one thing in because they like the way it looks, and everyone's just like covering something satanic, and it's
Like we can't just have something nice, guys. I mean, come on. So, and and you have other times too where people will allow like a head canon or lore, like the alleged Indian burial ground that's across the street from the clinic. Sometimes you want something to be true so bad that you will let facts go to the wayside.
that is actually one of the theories to some of the cryptids. Like, it was not real, but enough people believed in it that it
Mm-hmm.
became real.
Yep.
So yeah, because people are trying to say like these people are believing these and so much, even if they're not in your area, like La Lorena or whatever her name is in I want to say Mexico. I don't know where she's from.
La Llorona.
Yes, She's been seen. People are claiming they see her now in the United States, and it's just because people are so believing into her that people are starting to feel like they see her, that they're starting to will her into existence, kind of thing.
Well, there is a study that was done. I want to say it was called like maybe the Phillips experiment or something. But basically, a group of people created a ghost. They created the ghost story, and then they fed into the story so much that they were eventually able to communicate with this ghost. And I mean, they gave this entity its entire backstory. You know, born in this date, died this date, was a sibling, it died as a child, its parents' names were this and this. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. And then putting enough out into the universe through the collective consciousness, this entity was able to manifest into an actual spirit that was able to be interacted with. So, I mean, there's definitely something to it.
What has been your favorite piece of evidence you've gotten investigating?
Whoever. Okay. Are you familiar with the Octagon Mansion in Franklin,
Yes.
Kentucky?
Yeah, I adore that place. Yes.
So, when I was leading a ghost hunt for event company a couple of years ago, and this building, it was built pre-Civil War by slave labor. It is 3 bricks deep and a perfect octagon. So apparently that's significant and hard to do. I don't build buildings, so I don't know. I just take people's word for it.
That's how I
But
am.
the only way in and out is through this one back door, and you have to put a key in and turn the key to lock or unlock it. And without the key, from the inside or the outside, you can't lock the door. Well, we took our group outside because we had seen and heard some noises. Some people said they thought they saw some UFOs. And I was like, hey, well, let's go outside and see what happens. You know, far be it for me to say, no, we're not going to do something. Well, we go out and we start doing our thing out there, and a piece of equipment does. You know, it happens. So I went and talked to the lead of the event, and I was like, hey, Ann, I need to go grab some more batteries. And she's like, okay, I'll cover your group while you run and go grab it. Well, get to the door and it's locked. So I'm like, oh, come on, Ann. You couldn't give me the key. So I run back over to her. I'm like, hey, I need the key. She didn't have it. So I went to one of the other investigators with our group at the time. She didn't have the key. So me and the other 2 investigators, we all went together. We emptied out our pockets, and none of us had a key. We had to end up calling the host
Oh,
or the location manager at like 1 in the morning and wait for them to drive like 30 minutes to come and let us back in the building. And after reviewing the cameras, none of us locked the door. But you could see all of us going and trying our best to get into this door and unlock it. So that is probably one of the coolest pieces of evidence within the paranormal. And then I'm also a practicing demonologist and an exorcist. And while conducting an exorcism one time, I was using a bundle of sage just to do some gentle cleansing. Because if it's just like a stubborn kind of spirit, you know, maybe I can just remove it. Don't have to go through all kinds of complex rituals and whatnot. Well, the sage bundle kept going off, and I had to keep relighting it, and it was outside. And at the end, I was like, well, yeah, I don't think that what was on you has been removed because the energy's still present, and you know the bundle didn't even stay lit the whole time, so that was kind of weird. And then the bundle of sage erupts in the flames in my hand. Now, obviously, that's not something you're going to see just every day, but it was still kind of freaky.
I can only imagine with that. I've studied basic demonology, but nothing too more in depth. Just because, I mean, it takes years to study that stuff.
Yep.
I'm still studying it.
I mean, and then the more you study, the more you don't know.
Yes.
Like
That's what I say is I'm
you'll
still
find a
studying it,
tangent,
but
and it's like I need to go and study more about this, but I want to go more this direction, and the more you branch off, it's a lot.
it also kind of depends also what you want to study, because I found out there's like different kind of demonologists and what they also believe in, kind of thing. So I'm still studying it, but I'm also, like I said, it's even as much as I study, it's still very basic compared to how much their knowledge there actually is.
If you want a very good beginner-friendly book, I would highly recommend The Dark Hours by a friend of mine named Victoria J. She's a demon folklorist, and so her entire field of study is just the folklore of demons. And so she doesn't write books on like this is how you cleanse, this is how it's just almost like categories, different traits to pay attention to in each category. And then if you want to go down the rabbit hole of any of those high level overviews, go for it.
Have you guys ever, and it's in Chester County, South Carolina. It wasn't too far from Charlotte. The
Chester
old,
County Jail.
yes.
I have not. I was gonna go. I had plans to go in 2020, but as you may recall, there was this little pandemic that happened,
Yeah.
and that kind of shut everything down for a while. And beyond that, every other time I've wanted to go and looked into it, if they had openings, I was booked, and vice versa. So, have not made it down there yet, but it's definitely on the bucket list.
I do recommend it. There is a place in the basement that for you as a male would have to be careful, because there was, and the lady who runs it will even tell you, she had someone there. He was on his, he was a studying demonologist. He was becoming one. He was doing a tour, and that was one of his places he went. And he warns everyone that the spirit in this one room in the basement will not take too kindly to males. I mean, you would have to go in there and be super friendly. If you provoke this thing, it is not going to tolerate it at all. And she's up in the office, up on the second floor, and it's pretty far. It's a pretty good distance. Once you're there, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a pretty good distance there. She's just relaxing, because she just relaxes in the office as people go out and do their investigations, and she's like, just come get me when it's time, time to go, or when you're done. So they're there. She's let him do his thing. All of a sudden, she heard him screaming at the top of his lungs. She ran down there, and that spirit had him by his neck, up off the ground, because he decided to provoke this thing. She's like, I warned
Yes.
you not to.
See, I never provoke. Ethically, I just can't. And I prohibit my team from doing it as well. Because, for one, we're not like Zach Bagans. You know, like, I'm not going to be like, all right, Ghost, come fight me. Like, why? That's not going to do anyone any good. And then also, I'm a big proponent of you get what you give. And if I go in and I give someone respect, I'm probably going to get it back in return. I mean, there could be spirits, and especially prisons, where Maybe we're the first living person to give them respect and dignity. Maybe
Yeah.
that's all they're looking for to move on. I don't know. But if I'm the first one that can give that to them, whether they deserve it or not, I mean, that's grace. Why wouldn't I?
It's just not smart, especially in that's the good example of why you don't provoke. Because you're gonna provoke the wrong spirit, and yeah, they can lift you up by the neck if they really wanted to.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
and I've
not like
seen so many people get like, scratches and stuff. I've had to carry people out of buildings before because they got like attacked in their stomach and they were throwing up blood. Like, you can get really messed up by going in and provoking.
you can't fight a spirit you can't see, basically. So
They'll win 10 out of
yeah,
10 times.
and that's one thing we always say is it doesn't make sense for you to provoke it because you're you're just gonna anger it. So that's all you're trying to do. You because you might not even get more because certain spirits you're either gonna piss it off to attack you, or it's going to either not want to talk to you because they're like, well, he's being disrespectful. I don't want to talk to him. I'm gonna go away. So yeah. So we're just like, why provoke it?
And like, I'm pretty confident in like the levels of spiritual protection that I have around me. But like, even if I took that as like a, I know I'm good and I'm safe, what about the person beside me?
Yeah.
You know? Um, because the incident where someone had to get carried out of a building and they were throwing up blood, there was a guest at one of our events. They're not the ones that provoked. The person that provoked was another guest. And they're like, God, y'all talk about this spirit being so strong. I don't think they're that strong. I don't think they can actually do anything. Well, they showed them. And the other guests that actually got attacked, they didn't deserve it. They were being polite. They were being respectful. But it just goes to show you don't know what could or couldn't happen in this field. So always go in with respect.
Yeah. It's funny here in Japan because if you break down Japan, the spirits in different places here are all different. Like for me, I have more of the tragedy ones because 2 hours for me is the Nagasaki bomb.
Oh,
4.5, 4 to 5 hours above me is the Hiroshima one. That's also where I have. That's also why I have more cryptids down here. Is they think the radiation from the bombs either mixed with humans or mixed with animals. They're not 100% sure, but created these changed whoever or whatever created these what they people think were cryptids.
I can easily see that.
Because we
Very.
have because up there in just north of just northern Hiroshima in a small town, they have their own version of Bigfoot. He's like 5 foot tall though, but his foot is like 10 inches long,
Oh
six
wow.
inches wide. Yeah,
I was about to say Bigfoot's apparently a short king, but
he is here, and they said he smelled like rotten flesh, but they're not sure. And they're trying to scientists are trying to make sense of it, but we don't really have Bigfoot hunters here like you guys do in the United States, where
yeah,
people actively go out there to the woods, try to research or find them. We don't have that here.
probably
So
smart. I mean, because Japan, it's a relatively small island.
yeah,
Like, I may not want to know everything. This, like, I can't just easily get off. So maybe ignorance is bliss.
no one from my knowledge has tried to find it. It's just one of those things where if you see it, you see it. But it's one because they're not 100%. It's never hurt anyone, but it's one of those things where they'd rather not find out.
Yep.
So that's also scientist theory is maybe the radiation mixed with the zoo animal and created that. or even with a person. They're like, we're not 100% sure. It could have been a person. Radiation
Easily
mixed
could have
with,
been.
because it is in Hiroshima, so that's one of the possibilities. You said there's also, I saw one of your posts, about cryptids being in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I know someone who said they've seen I don't know what everyone's calling it, but the owl cat, where it's like looks like half owl, half cat.
I know that one. That's kind of more up in my neck of the woods ish. Um, I'm just at the base of the Appalachian Mountains, but that's I think a little bit more into the mountain range. Um, haven't seen it. Is it probably out there? Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, we discover new creatures every day, and to me, that's a big difference between cryptozoology and demonology, ghost hunting, whatever. Is with the spiritual, we can only talk about concepts and theories, and we'll never know the reality until we pass through the veil ourselves.
Yeah.
But for cryptids, what we call a cryptid today, tomorrow could have a scientific name.
What were the ones that, oh, you posted about them? I was going to ask you. I've not heard of all of them.
I
What were the
know
some?
there's the Beast of Bladenborough, that's more near the coast. That's supposed to be like a almost like a dog cat boar hybrid kind of thing. Um, then there is Normie, which is the Loch Ness monster of Lake Norman. I don't know how many sightings there are of that particular one, but it's popular enough that it's got its own little mini following and craze. Not obviously as big monster, but
There is. I kind of believe in that one just because there is. We have two similar here in Japan. One in northern Japan and one in southern Japan. There's been two different. They're different colors, basically.
huh.
They look a little bit different. They're different colors, but other than that, they're kind of similar. Just might be like size, color, or something else is a little bit off. But there is supposed to be one in northern Japan, and there's one in southern Japan
Yeah,
where you go to town, you can also see statues of them.
and why can't it be legit? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say 100% it is, but we, especially something from the sea, we discover new sea creatures every day. We know more about the moon and Mars than we do our own ocean. So, like, how are you going to sit here and tell me that it can't exist?
Then Lake Superior
Mm.
up there around Michigan has its own where
Oh,
people have
yeah.
seen it. But they also, just like where the Loch Ness monster is supposed to live, it's so deep they have not seen the bottom. So technically, possibly it could live down there where it's more in the pressure area where we have not seen yet. We don't know.
And I mean, if you think about like global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it, the way that that affects the sea is insane because as like the ice caps melt or just glacial melt, that changes the salinity of the ocean, of lakes, and that changes the buoyancy. And so if you need a certain level of pressure to survive, you're going to just have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. Or if you're in the ocean, you might have to move more south towards the equator if you need a certain temperature, because now here's all this formerly frozen ice cold water cooling down oceans. It's easily explainable why you might be able to see something for decades and then it goes away. Or Why is something that's never been there all of a sudden now it is? The conditions have changed, and so now you can see it, or vice versa, where previously you couldn't.
Have you ever seen the movie The Meg?
Yeah.
That is actually one of the theories people have with the ocean, where with the Meg, how it came up was there was a barrier down there in the ocean where our part up here couldn't get down there. Whatever was beneath that could not get up here. That is a theory that people I've heard that theory before the movie came out because people always had that theory was there's a barrier down there that we can't cross and they can't cross. So they said technically megalodons could still be down there. There could be other creatures down there. They're just down there past this barrier that we can't cross. And that's how the megalodon finally came up is they finally found a way to break through that barrier. It found that hole and came up.
And I mean, for something that massive, it would have to be deep. Because if it came more towards the surface, it's fighting against gravity. And then, I mean, most whales that come up, they eventually end up breaking the bones in their back when they come up for air because of the gravity. And their bones are made to sustain them in the ocean, which has significantly less gravity. So, yeah, 100% easily possible. And there's miles and miles and miles of ocean below what we've been able to decently catalog.
I can totally see that theory being true though, because there's also scientists have found megalodon teeth dated after when they supposedly extinct. So
Yep.
maybe one is hiding down there.
Who knows? It's just equally as plausible that there's not one.
We don't know. All of a sudden, things are coming up that we thought were extinct. They just recently found a new snail in Australia. So we're still discovering.
And I'm sure it's like the most venomous snail to ever exist. Just because Australia, why not?
The only reason why I know about it is because Robert Irwin posted it on his Instagram because they named it after him.
I love that man.
I do too, yeah. So yeah, he posted on his Instagram. He's like, yeah, they named it after me. They just found this new snail type here in Australia. So we're still somehow discovering new creatures even today.
Yep, and it's just the more you think you might know something, the more you don't. And stuff's constantly changing. I mean, even within like historical preservation, we might tell a story one way and then you find an artifact and it's like, oh wow, this disproves what we've been teaching for decades. And so now the narrative has to change. And you've always got to be open to new evidence, to new information, new concepts. Because if you're so rigid and stuck in the box, you're never going to grow.
Have you ever seen the Brown Mountain Lights?
I have not. I have been to Brown Mountain, but I have not seen the lights. I'd like to, but no, granted, I wasn't really there when it was dark, but you know, I went in the summer.
What was the theories with that? Was it aliens that they think it was, or was it something with the Native Americans? I can't remember the theory on what
There's
those.
A ton of theories. So one of them is obviously is an alien, because anytime there's a light in the sky ever, aliens. I've heard that it is possibly something like an orb from some Native American ritual or something along those lines, because those areas were heavily settled by the natives. Um, One that I think might be a little bit more plausible is that it is moonshiners, and it's just light reflecting off of the copper still. That would at least tie into the same color that the light usually is presented with. That being said, it would be a constant light, and it's not something that right now, every time the lights are presented, they're almost flickering and fluttering and they move. And if it was a still and they're just making moonshine, it's just going to stay in one spot. Um, I've heard a theory that it's just headlights from cars and it's bouncing off of moisture in the air. That one seems a little bit more far-fetched to me, because as we've gone to more LED lights in cars instead of the older like halogen bulbs, you would expect the color to change from being more amber to being more of a pure white or a blue white.
Oh yeah.
And they've always maintained that amberish color. So I don't really see. Now, of course, some of the spottings could be lights from a car bouncing off of like droplets in the sky, but the colors don't tend to line up with what we currently have on modern automobiles.
Yeah, especially the newer ones are so bright white.
I know, I hate them.
But going back to the moonshine, it could definitely be a whole thing because, and anyone not from the Carolinas, you either know someone that makes real moonshine or you know someone who makes real moonshine. And I'm not talking about the stuff you get at the store, but I mean the real stuff. Because I had a connection where someone would go out and get me the real thing that's not from a store. I can't, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know how to explain it, but it's the real stuff is different from the moonshine you can buy in a liquor store.
Way different, way stronger.
Yeah.
Like, they have to water down what you get in like your grocery chains or your ABC stores so that it's like 40 proof. But most of the moonshine that you can get from actual moonshiners is 90 proof ish, give or take. I mean, sometimes they'll water it down just to make it more palatable, but
The, they did not do that with the stuff I got. So that's one thing I say. If you don't know, I don't know how to explain it. You
cool.
obviously know what I'm talking about, the real stuff. It's so different than the store.
Like, what you get at the store is fine, but the real McCoy, it hits different.
Yeah, it does hit different. Yeah, I look back at the cryptid thing you posted about the big cats.
Who?
Some of the cryptids you posted about, you said from the big cats.
I don't remember that off the top of my head.
Wasn't sure if North Carolina had like big cats there now.
Maybe. I have actually, this might be what I'm recalling now. I know that there was a sighting of a, I want to say maybe a panther or something along those lines. And obviously, for those who don't know, we do have bobcats up in the area. We've got coyotes, but a panther is pretty different from a bobcat or a coyote. And I believe we had a sighting of something like that. So nothing's been killed, nothing's been captured. It's just been sightings here and there. But it is possible that we do have a big predatory cat living somewhere in the southern Appalachian Mountains, whether that be North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, somewhere in that ballpark.
Someone was saying they could totally see how it would thrive living there too, if that
Oh,
was the case.
especially around here, because kind of like how we don't know about parts of the oceans, around these parts, we've got a saying: if you heard something, no, you didn't, because
Heard your name? No, you didn't.
yeah, it could be anything, and especially at night, you don't go looking.
You hear whistling? Don't whistle back.
Mm-mm. You just you head home and you close the door,
And you mind your business, yeah.
and that's how you stay safe. Because it could be a spirit, it could be a cryptid, or it could be one of those moonshiners we just talked about. And you don't want to accidentally run up on a moonshiner.
Oh no, they're definitely don't.
They can be
Well, they,
scarier than your ghosts and your cryptids.
that is one thing that people are telling me with urban exploring. Of course, people say, "Oh, I'm paranormal investigating here," but they're going into abandoned places. One of the scariest things they say is like homeless people because you just some of them are on drugs and they do charge. I've heard stories of that where they've been somewhere and there's a homeless person and they said you could totally see that they were drugged out and they were just running at us. And I'm like, I would panic.
Yeah,
Like
like
this
we've
is
had some hospitals and stuff around where we've wanted to go, but I don't let my team go into abandoned buildings without permission because one, that's trespassing, and you know, I'm a big fan of not breaking the law. But then two, you don't know what you don't know. Not only could you run into potentially dangerous spirits like we had talked about earlier, but you could run into a homeless person, you could run into someone that's strung out on drugs, and now you are in a similarly dangerous situation, but different, and you might be hesitant to call the police for assistance because you broke
you
into
have
it.
to admit that you trespass. Yeah.
Yep,
And you can get charged for that. One thing people also forget is if you take a video there of yourself, they can use that down the line
that's
as
evidence.
evidence and still get you in trouble for trespassing if they wanted to. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I wasn't caught then. But they also posted a video online for the public to see of them inside it. And I'm like, why? Why would you do this?
That's enough technically to issue a citation.
The popular place to do it when I was there was Andrew Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yep.
fenced up. You see, I live 15 minutes from it. I've seen it, but I've only been the outside of it and taken like pictures of it. But I was watched by police to make sure I wasn't trying to enter further. I was like, I just wanted some cool photos. I'm like, I'm not stupid enough to walk in there because people are like, oh, well, people cut holes in fences. I'm like, that's definitely not okay. If you're sneaking through a hole in a fence, there's no way when the police catch you, you can be like, oh, I didn't know.
Yep. And we've actually, my team's reached out to the people that oversee Andrew Jackson, just to say, hey, can we legally get in? We won't tell anyone. We just want to just get legal permission to go in. Unfortunately, the condition of the site, it's not safe. So floors can easily give way.
Yeah.
There is some parts that I believe have asbestos, and yeah, it might be cool, but it's not worth not knowing if I'm about to fall 2 stories.
Yeah, and that's also the same time as what I was saying before. That place right across the street has a police building. So I'm just like, you're probably gonna get caught because they're gonna see your car around that area because there's nowhere to park besides up near the area.
Your flashlight,
Flashlight,
and if you
you
don't have a
walking out,
flashlight,
but they're
you will get hurt.
and the only way to enter too is the people who own it do have cameras. And people keep forgetting cameras.
Yep. There's another one that was really big for urban exploring. Cannon Memorial Hospital, I think it is.
Yeah.
And that's another one that's no longer remotely safe to go into. In fact, a lot of its floors have already fallen in, from my understanding.
Yeah, going back to the big cats though, that reminded me of back in Ireland, the Hellfire Club.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be haunted in the day of a giant cat creature that would attack. You would hear it growl, it would attack. I guess it even attacked a priest. But even like the buildings around the hill it was on would reported being haunted by a giant cat creature.
That reminds me, I know there is a tale within Celtic lore about something like that. I'm not well versed enough to give any of those details, but given that it's in Ireland and with connections to the Hellfire Club,
Mhm.
probably something there.
People only speculated what happened there, but people can be like, "Oh, you don't actually know for sure because they never came out and said it." I'm like, "Yes, but the president did refer to him as I want to say King of Hell or whatever his nickname was." I'm like, "You don't just give yourself that nickname for no reason."
Yeah, I mean, take it from a Crowley. You don't just give yourself nicknames for no reason. If you're calling yourself something, there's probably a reason behind it.
And a lot of higher ups and also members of it. So there was rumors, and I can kind of see some of them being true due to the fact is, like I said, I mean, you don't give yourself that kind of nickname. I'm trying to remember what he called himself. Yeah, the president, they called him the King of Hell and dressed like Satan. So he did something.
I'm
And a
curious
lot of
what dressed like Satan means.
that's all they said was he dressed like Satan. So yeah, I'm not. That was a description of how he dressed. I don't think I've ever seen pictures or a description of that though too. If it was like devil horns or with the little thing, I can't. But
Little
definitely with a
trident
name like
of some
that, if
sort.
he's claiming he dressed like the devil to what they thought was the devil, they're probably doing something because people would also claim to go insane where they're just like they went up there to see what would happen and did not come back sound of mind. Or some people said people got curious, walked up there to see what's going on, and were never seen again, or were found dead the next day. And that's when a priest went up, as they speculated, Hellfire Club must have unalived him, and that's when he met the big cat and was attacked.
Yeah, I mean, and I always enjoy stories like that too, where it's like, oh, something's going on, just send the priest. Our priest isn't always the answer. As someone who's ordained, uh, if you tell me, hey, there's a grizzly bear attacking some guys up the mountain, what am I going to do about it? I can pray from the comfort of my home. You know what I mean?
But
Or
that's what they did no matter what happened. Even if, like you said, it was a bear attack, they would go to the priest, like, the priest had magical powers, and you're just like I would just be like, "I'm gonna pray for the comforts of my house, but thank you."
yeah,
I can
like
imagine I can
if
imagine
you're
a priest.
gonna need something, since this particular accounts from Ireland, that means that they are statistically Catholic. So pray the rosary 5 times maybe and call it a day. Um, I don't know what to tell you.
I can totally see the priest, though, like, "I will pray to comfort the church. Bless you, child." That's but you're on your own with that bear attack. Or even investigating a murder, I'd just be like, "You let me know what you find. I will pray over the body, but
Yeah,
just let me know what you find."
yeah, that's not the right place. Just not. That's not to get into all of the other controversies that you might have with some other members of the clergy, because some of those fun scandals that have come up throughout the years.
Not all priests would go and do anything anyways, like, not all priests if you feel like there is a demonic presence in your house, not all priests will come and answer.
No, I've actually been called in by other members of the clergy because they're like, "Hey, Dustin, so I've got a friend, and they said that there's some stuff going on with some scratching and some claw marks, and they think it might be demonic. Can you go take a look at it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," because it's not it's not for everyone.
It's
Like you can't just be like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna be a demonologist today," or
Mhm.
"Today I feel like being an exorcist." Like those aren't just titles that you're just like, "I think I'm gonna be that now." It takes a lot of study and training and nerves of steel, to be completely honest, because you don't know what you don't know, and it can be terrifying actually in the field.
I got to that point studying demonology that I could have studied to also do the exorcisms, but I didn't want to. I only studied enough to, like, assist, just because of the fact is, I mean, like you were saying, it's a lot of responsibility, so I'm just like, if someone wants me to go to assist, I will. I don't want the actual responsibility of doing an actual thing,
Yep.
just because you know how fast something can go wrong, and unfortunately, when it goes wrong, it's not like, oops, it's not a little thing. Something bad, something horrible could
And who are
happen.
you going to call for help?
Yeah, and that's what's like. I will study enough to assist you, but I don't want the responsibility of something going wrong or something. You can also make it worse. So I'm like, I just want to assist. I will study enough to assist. I am good with assisting you, but I don't want the actual responsibility of in case you can make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want, if in case it goes worse, I want to be able to get the remaining family members out. I don't want to be like, that's what am I doing now? I'm like, I would rather just assist you with the family, and I'd be like, that's
And that, more power to you, because I've
yeah.
got team members, and when we get some of the more serious cases coming through, they're like, "All right, Dustin, this is all on you." I'm like, "All right, who's going with me?" No one. I'm like, "Nah, someone's going with me." Um, but it's kind of like pulling teeth, and I get it. Again, it's not everyone's calling, and you gotta have nerves of steel, because while probably 95 at least percent of demonic cases I get called in on are not demonic, and that's a low ball. It's probably closer to like 98, 99%. You're still that, 1 or 2% that are.
Mhm.
And once you get started, you got to see it through.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is I study enough to assist you, and I'll be right there behind you, but at the same time, things can go wrong so fast, and I'm just like, and it's one of those things where you don't like. I thought for sure I'd be like, I'm gonna be one of those. I could do it by myself, and I'm like, nah. Once you see one, you're just like, I will assist, and I'm good.
Yep. And I mean, even just being in the presence of something that powerful and that dark, it's, I don't even know how to put it in words.
You can't hesitate though either. Doing that's what I'm saying is I will assist the person. I set enough to assist you, and I will study to be able to do one. But I'd rather assist because I've seen one. I know how fast they can go bad, and I'm like, I'd rather assist. So this way, I just don't want the responsibility if things go sideways fast. I will assist you in case it does, if I can. But there's also got to be someone there who, in case something does happen, there's other family members there. Gotta get them out.
Yep. And I'll say there's also been like a resurgence in like demons in like pop culture. Like I don't know if you've watched Has Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss,
Yeah.
but some of those follow pretty closely within some of the various literature. Closer
I
than
think
I
that
would be comfortable with just sharing. But still, eventually
yeah,
that's gonna probably cause some issues.
I couldn't do it here in Japan just because I don't know enough about the Buddhist religion to because as someone even said, you do based on the religion of whoever you're helping because you
Yep,
can't use your Catholic faith on someone Buddhist because they're not going to believe you, so it's not going to work. They're not going to believe in what you're doing, so it's not going to work. I
exactly.
know enough for. I mean, I came here knowing nothing. I've started learning more just because it is the culture here, but mostly because me, I also do like haunted places on TikTok. I do Bella Spooky Tales on TikTok, and that's how I started. So learning, because most shrines here in Japan are built for either like a deity or to appease a spirit.
Hmm.
That's what they did. They feel like the malevolent spirit around. They built it a shrine to make it happy. That's a lot of them are. But like, there's obviously there's temples here, so I kind of studied in a little bit to know the culture. So when I'm going into something, I can appreciate it more compared to, oh, what a pretty statue. Now I know what it is.
Yep. And that's something that I think is really cool, because especially around these here parts, you know what I mean? Uh, it's pretty much not just Protestant, but just Southern Baptist Protestant, and that's it. And that's what I was raised as. It's not what I practice today, but that's such a narrow box, and you especially doing what we do,
Hmm.
you can't
Like,
just be limited to something so small.
like you can't hear sage a place. You won't find sage. They don't believe in sage. So if you came in and you're just like, you came over here, you're gonna help someone or someone of the Buddhist or someone of that faith in the United States. If you went to their house to help them, you brought out sage. It's not gonna work because you're just burning a plant to them. They don't. It's nothing. They go to the and I do participate in this just because it's one of their cultures. So a lot of spirits behave in that way, and I do go to like their where the monks, the temples where the monks are, and I have them do the whole cleansing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just do their own cleansing, and they do it so they have their own specific. Oh, what is it called? incense sticks where it's not really a scent, but it's like a cleansing one.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
their own. I'm not quite sure how it's made or what's made of. It's specific for their cleansing.
I know what you're talking about, though. I don't know the scent or anything on
I
it, but I
don't
do know
know.
that they've got their own unique
It's
little
not really scented. It's
blend,
more,
sort
yeah.
of.
I've seen it. But it's not really scented, but it's something. I don't know how it's made, but it's made for like a monks to kind of cleanse you, and that's what you have to do before entering their temples. You kind of put it around you, and then you put it down into their little ashes because they just let it burn down itself.
Yep.
But while it's doing that with the smoke, you kind of make sure get it go like that to make sure it's all in you again, and that's their cleansing. They have those little scent things, so you'd have to use something like that for them.
Which is really
Use that in
cool.
their house, yeah. And I guess they do at certain shrines or temples. You can buy them here. And it's one of those things where I'm kind of keeping an eye out for that just because of respect for their religion. That's what I participate in, is respect for their religion, especially if that's what their spirits are. That's what's going to work best. Not sage, because
Yep.
sage means nothing here. Sage basically to me would be like a peace of mind kind of thing, but it's not to them. Not going to do anything.
But it's interesting that smoke is once again the cleansing agent. So just kind of goes to show that even across continents, there's something to smoke cleansing.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, but that's what they use. But it has to be that certain incense stick. I don't. It is. I can't remember the name.
And I know they also do a certain type of incense in India, um, where there's a certain flower that is put into some river, so like on their ancestors, and then those flowers are like gathered up and turned into incense, and that's what they use in some ceremony. So it's probably not quite to that same degree, but similar.
I think you also posted about the moon people in the Carolinas.
Yeah, that's that is a very fascinating and bizarre piece of our history. Um, I don't remember. I think their skin was blue, and they talked about this whole civilization that they came from, and they had a language that no one else understood. And it was just two children, no idea where they came from. They ended up marrying and having kids of their own, but like it's crazy to think about. Like if you or I were to see someone with blue skin,
Hmm.
we're gonna probably just be like, okay, call the ambulance because they're suffocating or something.
Yeah,
But for the people of the day, they saw these blue skinned kids and they took them in, which I'm glad they did. I wish color photographs existed back in the day, but yeah, that was a freaky coincidence, if you believe in coincidences. Um, and to my knowledge, I'm not familiar with anyone else that has had similar experiences like within other regions of at least the United States. I'm sure globally there's probably something similar, but I haven't heard of anything else like that happening nearby.
I remember hearing when the United States government confirms there are aliens.
Mm-hmm.
We do have alien equipment, and we're studying it. And then they seemed upset that no one was shocked.
Well, it was the worst kept secret. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if your secret area that you do all the alien testing at has like a fucking gift shop for UFOs, like, you can't be like, oh, why is no one shocked when we released this? Because we knew.
We're like,
Yeah,
thanks for
we didn't
confirming
see your
similarity.
pictures or videos, but we knew.
Yeah. There is some. So here in Japan, every year there are earthquakes. Because I know everyone heard about the one on New Year's, and everyone's just like, "Oh, it's a sign," because you never heard of any for the longest time. Like there's actually it happens yearly here. There's at least a few a year, so it's nothing new. But the worse the earthquake is, so that's what they say, because people are more used to it. They go out in the streets. They also say a lot of them look to the sky because that's when they see the most UFO activity here, is during
Huh,
an earthquake.
interesting.
That is one of two different theories where some people believe maybe they came from the ocean. Other people, there's also another theory of core Earth, and some people also believe in core Earth think that some of the UFOs that we've seen is not from outer space but from core Earth.
Hmm. I haven't heard that, but that being said, I mean, to me, the fact that like it could come from the ocean,
Yeah,
especially around Japan,
that's because especially around here might have came from the. That's a theory that could hold out more. Is is they're feeling a shaking down there too, so that's when you all of a sudden see them more
and
flying
I
out.
mean, you think of the other places where you have a lot of earthquakes. You think of like California here in the United States, right beside the Pacific. So there could easily be a correlation. I mean, if another species was coming to our planet, they're coming for our oceans.
I
So
can
that's what they would come for.
I know a lot of people. It's some people don't believe that, but it does make sense. But same, and I know people like they probably couldn't survive in the water. We don't know that. I don't know if they can breathe underwater or handle the pressure. You don't know.
I mean, why couldn't they? We can't breathe in outer space. There are planets that the atmosphere is toxic to humans. We also can't breathe in the ocean. Maybe they can.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's just as plausible as anything else.
that is the one thing I love about the paranormal is there's so many theories on different things, and that's also why I love talking to different people to hear what their theory is, to hear new and different theories. And like you were saying before, I know when people in the paranormal will disagree and butt heads and be like, "You're wrong because I believe in this, so it has to be true, and I can't work with you. I can't talk to you because you're wrong." And
Yep.
it's not the case because you're just like as you said before. Who actually knows until you pass through?
And even then, will we really know?
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's just too much uncertainty out there to ever claim that you know. Like with aliens possibly breathing underwater. If I were to sit here and say absolutely not, that cannot be the case, why not? Can you can you tell me why? There's no empirical evidence one way or the other. There's technically not even empirical evidence that extraterrestrials exist in the way that you and I most likely seeing them in our mind's eye.
hmm
So we might be attributing too much or too little to this concept of them.
And that's why a lot of people today are not feeling para-unity, is because there's so much disagreement and people are refusing to believe, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're wrong, maybe I'm right, maybe you're right. Who no one actually knows. And that's why the whole disagreeing with each other and be like, I can't be friends with you because you don't believe in this does not make sense to me.
See, and that's one thing I like about going to some of these cons and conventions. Like, I can go and I can bitterly argue with you over any topic. And then at the end of that hour session or whatever, cool, let's go get a drink. I mean, there are a couple of topics that's not the case on. Like, periodically, I'll do a diversity and inclusion within the paranormal topic, where it's like inclusion of women, inclusion of LGBTQ individuals, inclusion of those with disabilities. Yeah, if you disagree with me on that topic, yeah, we can't really be friends after.
Yeah.
But if you disagree on cryptids or aliens or ghost spirits, religion, whatever.
Unfortunately, I've seen so many people quit the paranormal field just because of they're feeling more hate than anything else in the paranormal community. And I'm like, this is what makes me sad.
Yeah, and it sucks because the majority of the people I meet in the field, they're so good and they have the right intentions. But then the small, very loud, very vocal minority are the ones that typically cause us all kinds of issues. Like, you'll hear all kinds of stuff about, oh, this group went in and they were disrespectful and they did this and blah, blah, blah. But there's another team that I try to mentor along the way and help whenever I can. And they founded because a friend of the leader passed away from a drunk driving accident. And so part of what they do is they investigate the paranormal, which was a shared pastime, and they also advocate for DUI awareness. Why can't we work together on something like that? But there's so many people that would get all up in their own heads and, oh, well, I can't advocate for something like that because I'm too busy going to this home to hotel and doing this. And like, there's got to be a human element to everything that we do.
Just because people investigate the same place does not mean, let's say you go in after somewhere I did, and let's say you got more that night than I did. That doesn't make your team better. Just means you had a better night. Then all of a sudden you could go back and not get a thing next time, but then also I get more evidence. It's not.
That's the one thing I hate too. When it's like, oh, we're so good because we got this evidence. No, you were lucky.
But
And I
yeah,
don't
and
say
that's
that
what we
like,
said.
oh, you're not good. You just got lucky. You were lucky. They were willing to communicate. Like, there are some days I get off of work and I come home and I don't want to talk to no one. I just want to like eat and go lay down. And then there are days I get off of work and, hey, it was a great day. Let's go out on the town. Let's go get drinks. Let's go watch a movie. Like, let's get the friends together. And it's just the same thing with spirits. Some days they're just not going to talk. And then some days you can't shut them up. And to think that we influence that, no, we can shut it down if we're provoking, if we're rude, if we're disrespectful. But so long as you both went in with the same mindset, the same mentality, the same level of respect. If you went on the day that they're not going to talk, and I went on the day where they're going to talk the whole time, you and I are no better or no worse.
Yeah, that's one thing we say is with the spirits or ghosts there is they were human once, so it might be a day where they're just like, I don't feel like doing this today. And then you go there and they feel more talkative, or you remind them of a relative or a friend of theirs, and they're just like, oh my gosh, they look like my brother. Let me go talk to them.
Like, so that reminds me actually, with the Harper House that my team holds investigations at, I've typically gotten really good responses. Like even times where we've split up into groups, the group that was with me would always get way more than the groups that were with other people. Well, now that I work for the Historical Association and I'm over that location, I was going through some of the historical records. I am the spitting image of the man that built it, minus a mustache. I'm not doing that. I can't grow like an 1880s mustache. I mean, I guess I could, but I'm not.
Not just
Outside of
going.
that, I mean, it's scary how much me and Daniel Schuler look alike. So now it makes sense. I look like the guy that built the house. So of course they're going to be more open to talking to me.
There was one house I've been in where I got more activity from the male spirit there, but it was because I looked like one of his old sweethearts.
Oh,
So to him, that's also why it's like he got protective of me. And if people, you mentioned me, he'd get angry or protective, and it's just because he even said it. She's my sweetheart. So he saw me as that person too.
and that's so cool. And again, like you could walk out saying, "Oh, I'm so much better as an investigator." Nope, you just happen to look like his old crush.
Yeah. And that's what we're saying is there's no rhyme or reason. There's just you going back to the Trivet clinic. I had good nights, I had bad nights, I had amazing nights. You had nights maybe got like one thing, and it's just that's how it is.
Yeah, and there's no like I always say you're going to get something at the clinic. Now, you might get stuff constantly, or you might get stuff only in one room.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had the same people go to the same place, do the same things in the same rooms, and one time it'll be amazing, one time it won't be. It just is what it is.
So one guy, he said his team, what they do is go to the rooms. They all ask the same question, like one at a time. Like they'll ask, "Is there anyone here?" Pass the wait a few seconds, pass the recorder, and everyone does the same thing. And they say they get some people get different responses, some people get different people.
It's actually a good idea. I've never thought about doing something like that because in a place like the clinic where there's so many spirits, you know,
Yeah,
this one might want to talk to me, this one wants to talk to you, this one wants to talk to someone else.
that's what he does. And they said sometimes you'll ask like, what's your name?" They pass it. They'll ask. They pause. Give time for an answer. Pass it to someone. You go pass around in a circle. Everyone asks the same question. You pause. You pass around, and they're like that themselves. They'll get
You know,
different responses or different people.
you know
So
what else I
yeah,
like about that? It just takes one person to come up with questions because otherwise, when everyone just goes around in a circle and it's like, "What's your name? Do you want to talk to me? Who's the president? How'd you die? Do you know you're dead?" Ultimately, someone's like, "Oh, they just asked my questions, and now I'm blanking. Uh, uh, just pass. Go to someone else." But if it's just the same question the entire time around the circle,
I would definitely try that just because someone was saying they had good luck doing that. Just because people get different responses. People also, you'll hear different spirits chime in for different people. And like, it's interesting to hear this person gets this spirit, this person, all of a sudden you keep hearing this spirit, and it's just, it keeps going like that. Going back to, like you said, you don't know who they want to talk to or why, but that's what they said. They've had a lot of success doing that. Because if
Yeah.
you might ask, "What's your name?" and they're like, "I don't like you," but you pass it to your next person and they're just, "What's your name?" and they give the answer, or or even vice versa. Someone says, "How old are you?" They might not want to answer for them. You ask, and you get an answer.
I mean, it's just like people.
Yeah,
Like there's some people on my team. Me and them have great rapport. We can talk for hours on end. And then there's some people on my team, and we're friendly, but it's just cordial, just pretty blunt, basic to the point, and that's just the conversation it's going to be. And and I've never thought about doing something like that where you give any and every spirit the chance to talk to who they want to talk to. And maybe the same spirit talks to everyone. Maybe they don't.
yeah. They said sometimes one person in a group keeps getting a response from one spirit. Another person in a group gets a response from another spirit, and it's just this way. At least this way, this way, everyone has a chance to ask. So whoever they want to respond to, they will. So you're not just getting part of an answer. Because if they don't want to talk to someone in a group, they're not going to answer. Compared to if they want to talk to you, and you ask, they're
Yeah.
going to answer, and then they might ask, and then they might answer your next question. Compared to if you're asking different questions, they don't want to respond to
Mm-hmm.
that person. You're not going to get the whole thing.
Especially when, and this is a small pet peeve of mine, but when people use an EVP recorder and they just keep asking yes and no questions, like just use a dowsing rod set, just use a pendulum.
I use pendulums for yes,
Like
no.
like what you have the option to hear anything and everything, and you're going to keep it with yes and no. You know what I mean? But that's a side tangent.
What other places have you guys enjoyed investigating?
Well, my favorite place is the battleship, just because the spirits there passed in World War II fighting for freedom. And so you just get a different feel because there's that kind of like level of honor and respect. And then one of my favorite ones, it's actually like a quarter of a mile away from my house. It is a local community theater. And the theaters are pretty notoriously haunted
Hmm.
because, for one, actors are petty and dramatic as fuck. And then, two, you think about the shows that get put on, all of the energy and the emotion from the audience just gets pumped into the space. If it's a comedy, there's all that high, jovial, fun laughter. If it's a tragedy, you're going to get sadness and despair. And that is just feeding into the spirits that are there. So that's probably my favorite place, especially kind of close by. Um, I mean, I've also investigated that building 20 to 30 times, but also, COVID. When you can't do anything else and you can get into a haunted theater, why don't you ghost hunt? Because you can do that with just one or two people, social distance, different floors, different levels. So we got a little bit spoiled.
Yeah, some places you do. Some places I've got some of the best is haunted churches.
I have a hard time getting into those because of my background as a member of the clergy. You would think it would make it easier, but I guess maybe to some extent it's almost like we don't want to bring in someone from the clergy because he'll judge us too much or something. I don't know. But I have been in like a handful of haunted churches, and those are fun.
A lot of people don't believe churches can be haunted, and I'm like, no, it is. And finally, when I found someone who also who's also been to a haunted church, yeah, they said, well, think about it. It also makes sense energy wise. If that's what they want is energy, a church is a really good place for that. Because think about it. You have weddings there. You have the happiest day of your life. You have funerals there, the saddest day of your life. So you have both those energies. But also think about the people who go there every Sunday.
All
There's
the gossiping and the
yes.
backbiting and the petty comments.
And I tell people, I'm like, there is some normal people who go there for church. I'm not saying everyone who goes to church is like that. I'm not.
But
But
there are
yes.
definitely the ones that fit that mold that do go.
And that's what I was trying to explain. I'm like, I'm not putting anyone down who goes to church. I'm not saying everyone who goes to church is like this, but there is, like, if you sit back and be quiet and you just try to remain invisible and you watch people, you'll see a lot of judgmental people.
Plus, think about this. How often does someone pray to God? Which God? If you're going to keep it vague and ambiguous, and I get like your worldview might be that there is only one God.
Hmm.
That is not my worldview. I am very much of the mindset of polytheism, that there are multiple gods and deities out there. And so if you're just, oh God, I hope you can just go help Betty Jane over there because, she just got pregnant and out of wedlock. Okay. Are we talking about Yahweh, Jesus, the Holy Spirit? Are we talking about uh, Freya? Are we talking about Artemis? Like, there's a lot of options here, okay? And you're invoking who knows what into your space.
Yes, but I've also been to like churches who I've met people who's been there for they wanted to seek God for the first time.
Mm.
They're curious, but they were basically chased away from the congregation because they're just like, we're better than you because we've been doing this every Sunday and pray, and all of a sudden you're just gonna it's your first time. And I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. Why would you turn people away?
That's why I'm not a member of the, like, active member of the clergy anymore. I'm still ordained. I still practice, but I can't deal with people like that anymore.
In the religion here, and I like this religion here, they have Enma when you pass away, where he judges you. I mean, he's also is like the boss down in the underworld, but he also judges you where he doesn't want you down there. If you were not a good person in real life, he gives you tests, but he hopes you pass them because he does not want people down there if they don't have to be.
I like that.
I love that because when I first studied that, I'm like I love that because people are just like, oh, if you're down there ruling the underworld, you probably want us down there. He this is why if you pass away and you go to him and you're supposed to be down there, he gives you tests hoping you pass so he can move you on to the better place compared to, well, we have to be down there. It actually makes him sad when people have to be in the underworld down there.
And I mean, and that's also just keeping with more of that Judeo-Christian concept of an underworld too, because God knows for the many different religions out there, it's not always. In fact, Christians usually have the worst concept of an afterlife. Most other religions just is what it is. It's just another plane of existence. And, you know, it might be a little bit better, it might be a little bit worse, but it's just what comes next.
What piece of advice for paranormal investigators would you give people?
Hmm. Constantly learn. Don't stop reading. Don't stop attending conventions. Find something that's out of your comfort zone and study it. Not saying that you'll become an expert, but you'll at least understand a different point of view.
Hmm.
Um, because the more you know, the better and more informed you'll be.
That's great advice. And hey, thank you so much for joining today. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks. So hopefully you'll join me again later and come back and we'll talk more. We'll have like more conversations about stuff too.
I mean, this has been enjoyable. So
Yeah.
maybe, and who knows, with my new job starting up, I might be able to actually do this in a Victorian era mansion next time.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I saw Alex's last best or setup was in a cemetery, and I'm like, that would be amazing too.
Yep, that would be really cool.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.